talk about what is full spectrum magnesium, and maybe we can kind of go from there.
Well, I think full spectrum to me is just kind of it's not a it's a self term that was I came up with it just only because that we see full spectrum, and that usually means we take a bunch of types of things and we put them all together in one, and that's full spectrum. Whereas, like, for me, the full spectrum is understanding magnesium itself and understanding like how it really works in the body. Like, if there's one word to define magnesium for me, it's flexibility. That's what it does in the human body. It renders everything flexible. It renders the bones, the teeth, the nerves, everything viscous and flexible. And that's kind of how it works. And so it gives like at the cellular level, it's the same. It also allows for calcium to come in, but not too much, and it keeps this kind of control on that to where the rigidity of the cell is controlled there too, because calcium will over rigidify, and then we have apoptosis and everything else. And so the magnesium has this role in kind of balancing out structure to where it can become soft enough and flexible enough to work better. Your teeth would just break if they were all calcium, right? So the magnesium helps to bring that flexibility there. And so I feel like when you understand it from that angle and you understand the history, I really feel like modern medicine should be more programmed into history, because they really did a lot back then to teach us about what's happening now. I mean, if you get a guy on bipolar and you give him some lithium, and he could destroy his kidneys, possibly, maybe his liver, whatever, thyroid. And the Greeks said, hey, send them to a lithium bath, like they would do that. They had a different method. They weren't harming anyone, but they figured out another way to do the same thing without doing any harm. And I feel like that's a powerful testament to how we could operate. So in the magnesium space, when they study history, doctors, they'll probably find that in Magnesia, of all places, which is where the Greeks set up a lot of this bath culture. And they did it there with some of the most famous baths were famous today even for magnesium in the waters, because of the dolomite type of, it's a type of stone that has, half magnesium, half calcium, whatever. So it's a very like high magnesium concentration in that whole region there. And so they're able to create these baths. They would use that as mortar, the dolomite. They would build that into the bath system. All of this stuff leaches. I mean, even their plumbing system was leachy. It was all clay. So everything leached magnesium, and there was a lot of like green clays and different types of clays they would use. And so so this whole system was basically a big leaching system of magnesium and minerals. And then they would bathe in it, and they would heat it, which is even turns everything up, right? And then they would bathe in it. And because there's so much, attention to bathing, and that culture was not about soap and hygiene. That was really about mag deficiency, minerals, a little bit of hygiene too, but there was other stuff going on there. And so we get all those things. We've taken those as supplements now. They were smart to build it into their society where you didn't have to remember to take it. Now we have to remember to take supplements like magnesium for long periods of time without even feeling anything in our bones. We just have to stay on it. So they built it in a way where we couldn't get away from it. And I think that was kind of smart. And so, especially the older crowd, a lot of the arthritis that we see is a lot of that's due to calcification too. And so we get calcium roaming around, making everything worse. And so this is a low mag life cycle. It doesn't mean you can stop calcification, but it just means you can soften it and kind of not make it. We're not supposed to age. It's supposed to go straight and then dovetail, right? We're not supposed to be on this farmer ramp, like limping on our way the last 20 years. And so I think that they understood something about that. We did too. Our founding fathers, they did all those waters. And they, Jefferson would write about all this rheumatism and all these things that they were able to overcome through these waters. So there was something in the water. It wasn't just magnesium. There was also sulfur. There were other components, but magnesium was a big player. And so trying to help people find a way to overcome that deficiency through the skin, because you have this huge surface area that we should be using, because you can bring more in without triggering the laxative of the kidneys. People with IBS, they can't even take the pills. Right? A lot of them. And so finding a way to help people to get it in the body through another system, which is intelligent, which copies the ocean, this connection between man and the sea. And, we know that, this history kept them from, I mean, they had a stronger composition. And so even the soils, they didn't even have the magnesium deficient soils, but they still did the baths. So they still knew that there was a reason to do it. And so we're just trying to help people find as many ways possible to not harm themselves and to maybe help a lot, you know? And so everything I try to recommend to people, like from the foie gras down to the there's nothing will ever harm you. It's a risk because you might have to spend some money, but like it won't harm you and you can just try it out, you know? And so that's kind of the way I try to do things. The company was built just to bring that tradition. Did you know that in the medical system in France, they have that as part of their medical system? That they will send people to different waters around the country, France, and for free. Actually, it was actually the coolest part of their kind of bad system, but it was kind of the coolest part. And you can get that those needs covered. They'll send you to this place for rheumatism and this one for whatever. And so they have like their own little system set up. It's a fascinating system, and we're trying to learn from them and find a modern way to bring that to people. That's kind of what we're doing. If you want to talk further on the way people process magnesium, it is sad that most magnesium is a technical grade magnesium. They use it for de-icing planes. It comes over on sheets, and then they, I mean, and on big boats, and then they turn it into the supplements and everything else that we use. And there is a little bit of quality somewhere sometimes, but when you try to get certificate of origins, nobody will give you one. They call it proprietary. And so we kind of know what they're doing. And so it's just a cheap magnesium that's been solvents extracted from undiscerning strata and just chemically made, purified by man to be the final thing. And what people don't realize when they buy their glycinate citrate, what rolls out of that? What's the magnesium that's going to roll out of that? Like the magnesium molecule itself, how was that made? How did they get that? And so we can't even be sure of all the things. I mean, people could tell you raw milk and pasteurized milk look the same under a microscope, possibly. They look the same if you feel them, but they're not the same. So we can't get into that type of quantification right now. But I will tell you that, like, to go from a natural stone where it's clear, you send spring water, you bring that back up, that brine, you bottle that brine in glass and you don't touch anything, you get a better chance of having nature-made molecule. So this is made by nature for 250 million years. Man's not really involved here except for bringing it up. And so we believe that this is a better magnesium, and especially because of there's such a good, huge source of it, the size of which is mind-blowing, we actually have the same price point as others. So it's like, just do it right. And the plastics do contaminate the magnesium. We know that. That's why the olive oil people from Spain stopped doing plastic, a lot of them, because they realized what it did to the olive oil. And so we're not being blind to that either. And I know that was a big spiel, but thank you for.
Oh, it's great. I tracked with you the whole way through. That was great. I mean, I think just the benefit of getting it transdermally is a big point, because people can identify that, especially pound for pound, even if it's not an optimal form that's utilized by the body, it's having to be processed by the liver, and or it's also causing intolerance, and they already have GI issues that they're thinking to take it in the first place, and they'll tell you firsthand that it will loosen the stool and they're not able to tolerate it. But then on top of that, getting it from a man-made source, or sorry, a nature-made source, which I think that's the problem with what we alluded to earlier with the food and the natural occurring nutrients in food versus synthetically or individually processed, and trying to take out the secret formula and I guess patenting it or copywriting it so that you lose all the benefits of it, but you also increase the profits of your company. Not to go down that pathway, but synthetic bees, petroleum based, same problem. But you mentioned, as far as the other thing I like about your company is, you say it even on your website, is you'll scrutinize, you're up for scrutiny to be able to test the quality and the source of your magnesium and like the quality of it. And as far as you mentioned with the Greeks and the dolomite, what's different about the rock? And because I know I can't pronounce the name of the rock that you have for your magnesium, but what is it? How's it pronounced?
It's called bischofite.
Okay, right. And go ahead, explain the quality of that magnesium, or what's special about that rock, or how it potentiates or gets the concentration of the ideal magnesium in the way that your company has been able to deliver that product.
Well, the Bishafite is actually it's the only stone out there that is basically a solid magnesium chloride. Most stones like carnallite and other from the Dead Sea, that's carnallite, like they're like under the Dead Sea, and some of these like are around that region, you could say. They have a little more potassium. They'll have other things in them. We got to kind of get that out of there, and then you make your product. Or you go to Salt Lake, oh, there's bromine, got to get that out of there. Mercury as well, Salt Lake, yeah, we got to get that out of there too. And then so we have to use solvents and treat and get the stuff out, and then we can make a magnesium oil and sell it and do all that stuff. So we don't have any of that. This is Bishafite. So Bishafite is natural state magnesium chloride. It's the clearest stone you can find with magnesium, meaning clarity. You can see through it. And so because of that clarity, that allows for just a salt to melt, and then we just pull it up. So because of that discovery, you have like a natural way to do this without having to use any chemicals or anything to get it to happen. And unfortunately, you can't just go locally. That's why they're doing this stuff. Sometimes they'll just go to Salt Lake and then they just extract it all, chemicalize it, and then they make it, and everybody's happy. But you end up getting a kind of a different product in the end. And they always say the solvents are all pulled out perfectly, but that we all know that there's still some in there, and there's little pieces of things that just hang on the edges. And it just changes the way the magnesium works in the body for us. And then also, even if we're wrong about that, like it's still the same price to get the other one. So it's almost like, okay, either way, we'll just bet on nature if we can, and so
Right.
that's kind of what we're letting people do, is just bet on nature, bet on the purity. We put all of the layers up on the site. We let people know about the geology. We let people know about this special formation. That was where the first land mammals came onto the earth, was through the Zechstein. Like we talk about a lot of these things. And so a lot of people don't, because once you're buying industrial grade stuff to make it cheaper, and people don't really care about the molecule per se, that's what they think, then you don't talk too much about source anymore. And so which is, it's just a different thing. And like we got the CBD movement coming, a lot of people, and I always tell people, it's like, okay, first of all, magnesium is more essential than CBD, but second of all, like magnesium and CBD, they work together. Like they work really good together. But CBD, the only problem with it is over time, there's no structure added. And so you need the structure. The structure is part of that formula where you're trying to help the body detoxify, get things out, heal deficiencies, be stronger, et cetera. You need to be able to have structure. So magnesium enhances the nerves over time. They become more flexible over time. They injure less. So structure is a big part of the formula. So when you're thinking about these other modalities, always think of structure as well alongside. And if you skip around from, I mean, like I said, you can go from the magnesium to getting it internally. A lot of people, we're not in competition with pills. So like pills are fine, the threonate, and that's all good. I'm glad they're out there making all sorts of stuff for different operations and surgical and this, and they do all sorts of stuff. But when you start taking it externally, it will eliminate both if there's over, but you end up getting this filtration system, and this allows for a better input, and you can abuse it in a sense, because the sports people that use this, high level sports people, they just dose up, like they don't even count. They just go, and they're training and getting out of the body. One more little feature that connects with your podcast with adrenal fatigue, because I'm sure that you guys talk about heavy metals and their effects on the gut, because the biome is controlling a lot of the acidity, and then that comes back to the kidney, and then here we go, and it all connects. But is that in the Roman times, when they would make salt, so when you make salt, a byproduct of salt is called bittern. And bittern is like a pure magnesium chloride. It's like sort of the similar thing as the Bishafite, except Bishafite's made by nature, and this is kind of like processed out or whatever. Or this could be naturally processed out too. So but it's a little different. And so that bittern, that's how they would clean their water supply. That's how they pulled cadmium and beryllium and molybdenum and all this stuff out of the water supply in those baths and in those times, was using the bittern. So what does that mean? That means that this chloride molecule, which is the master molecule in the human body, like when you eat like your almonds, that hydrochloric acid chlorifies that magnesium. There's a chloride process always. And so I can't prove this, and this is one of my like reaching theories, but like, the first layer of your skin is acidic. The second layer is fat. So as that chloride comes in from the sea over those 30 minutes you're in it, like it turns that chloride into citrate as it comes in, and then it turns it into glycinate. So it basically makes food out of that same molecule as it comes in and touches all those layers. And so we're buying all this stuff that the body naturally makes. Most of this dextrogear stuff is the levrogear is the dextrogear that we find in the body. And so we're trying to like just help people realize how smart our ancestors were, and help them find a way that they could be sure of history, natural, and then, an alternative that can't hurt. And we're kind of riding that line right there without wanting to bump heads. Magnesium is one of the most researched minerals in the world, so we're okay with that, but just trying to offer a better solution.
No, it's wonderful. When I explain it, Daniel, to our patients, I like the term the magnesium burn rate, where if your demand for energy exceeds your supply for energy, every time you produce ATP and it converts into ADP, it's releasing a magnesium in that process to be able to create that energy. And then you're burning that all off, and you're not getting it back because we're so devoid of minerals in our soils, or everything you've just talked about. Or better yet, I mean, we're just not eating good quality food because I always, it's cheap food. And I always, I love that saying, where instead of wondering why the food is so expensive, you should be wondering why, it's so cheap, right? Because if it's really inexpensive food, what kind of quality food is it in there? So awesome, great stuff. So the website is the Heart of Tradition. Your main product is the Transdermal Magnesium. I'm sorry, I didn't do my homework. Is there other products that you sell on there as well, or that you promote?
For now, we're kind of like a one-trick pony with different sizes and things coming, and some, roll-on applicator and other things coming around, and there's a few products in that domain. But like for now, that's kind of all we're doing. We do a little bit on, we have some books. We're going to start a full nutrition blog as part of the site coming up soon too. That's pretty much it for now. For now, I haven't seen the need to go into a second product, but I've been playing around with a couple ideas, but those are secret for now.
Well, if you got what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you got what you got. Coming to an end here, I always like to ask, what would you have wished you knew then that you know now, that would have helped with either any stress related disorders, or being exhausted, or being burnt out, or overwhelmed, or any type of health challenges that you may have had? Now that you have your infinite wisdom now, what would you have told the younger, more naive Daniel to sort of accelerate your process?
Wow, that's such a good question. I probably, I got on the homeopathy a bit late in the game, and I feel like it was really helpful, especially the higher level homeopathy, which is called like sensation level, which they do a lot in the UK and Europe and stuff like that. I feel like that was like a little game changer for me. I had thyroid issues, and that actually helped me to come off the meds that I was on. My body did thicken a little bit, I think, to compensate for the lack of warmth, and maybe even hormones. But it was healthy. It was a healthy change. And so I probably would have got closer to that sooner.
Thank you for sharing that. I think the body's incredibly resilient, right? And it has an amazing way of regenerating its tissues. Look at lungs that have been smoked upon for many, many years, and that person stops smoking, and all of a sudden it creates new tissue. And there's a certain amount of learning your body. I think that's the lesson really that you're talking about,
Mm,
always looking to improve. And I think that also is a really good point where I do a lot of genomic test interpretations, and just you're not, your body is engineered over the millennia to process the environment in a certain way. And if you bend the rules too much beyond what the genetic program looks like, even though the environment helps to press the computer keyboards, if you will, the hard wiring isn't as flexible as you think it will be. Number one. Number two is a lot of vegetarians and vegans do have challenges in getting access to, especially if they're not diligent with their diet, with the essential aminos or choline or vitamin A and retinol,
yep.
probably even K2 now that you're talking about that. It's really hard to do that and be able to give your body the array that it needs. So understanding that the body and what percentages are enough for you to be in that ideal Goldilocks zone, but also be in that philosophical zone. Learn a lot of information on this, and this was definitely a one that I learned some great insights as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was good for me as well. Thanks.
Awesome. Take care.